I'm going to read about Thoreau's getting set up in Walden Pond from the life of Henry David Thoreau, page 197. Thoreau's needs were ludicrously simple. For vanity, he kept a 3-inch looking-glass off the cover of a shaving box. For cleanliness, a dipper and a wash basin, and for water, all of Walden Pond, in which he bathed every morning when he could. In summer, when the lake was too warm to drink, he portaged cool water from Brister spring over the hill. If he had a privy, no record of it survives. As for a kitchen, that first summer he cooked in a hole in the earth, lined with stones, on which he built a fire. One early visitor recalled their earthen dinner of roasted horn pork pot, corn, beans, and bread. The fish were, with a little salt, delicious. For bread, Thoreau mixed meal with lake water, spreading the dough on a stone and baking it in an earthen oven, unleavened flat bread. Once he had finished his chimney, he built a little used bricks and pond stones and mortared with white sand from the pond. He could cook on a hearth for his second winter. He installed a stove. We're reading about what to do in winter. For kitchenware, he had a kettle, a skillet, a frying pan, a jug for oil, and another for molasses, 3 plates, 2 knives, 2 forks, 1 spoon, and a cup. Do you think he was kind of minimal? Wow. He's talking about the cabin at Walden Pond. No wonder so many of his visitors brought picnic baskets. They probably didn't have enough silverware. The light and airy unfinished house was perfect for summer, but as fall approached, Thoreau weatherproofed it by buying a load of cheap shingles, planing them straight, and shingling the roof and sides, while the open rafters with the bark on and the rough brown knotty pine boards pleased his eye. Inside they were too draughty for comfort, so that November he reluctantly plastered the interior. See, he liked the open wood look. What do you think about that? He plastered the interior, learning by trial and error and living at home with his family until it dried. Do you know he went home for the weekends to have, he just walked home and once a week and have dinner with his mother? What do you think of that? We thought he was isolated in the woods, but he walked back to Concord to go out to. Back inside in early December with stump wood crackling on the hearth and shadows flickering around the rafters, he felt he first began to inhabit his cozy house. Kitchen, chamber, parlor, and keeping room, all at once. Small to be sure, but all the larger for being entirely his own. In one of Walden's most famous one-liners, Thoreau declared he kept 3 chairs, quote, 1 for solitude, 2 for friendship, and 3 for society. So, 1 solitude, 2 is for friend, and 3 is for society. His most frequent visitors were his closest friends, the farmer Edmund Hosmer, the poet Ellery Channing, and the philosopher Bronson Alcott, who that second winter walked over every Sunday, plus the occasional call from his landlord and waterlord, Emerson, Ralph Waldo Emerson, no less. So he's the landlord. Do you know his cabin, the property's owned by Emerson? Or the French-Canadian woodchopper Alec Terrien. Woodchopper Alec, T-H-E-R-I-E-N, who made his last supper on a woodchuck which his dog caught. But society didn't only come to his door. He went out and found it as well. One Saturday late in August, a sudden thunderstorm sent Thoreau running for shelter to a nearby hut, where he found the Irishman, John Field, with his broad-faced boy and his wife Mary, an infant on her knee. Thoreau recorded the story of the honest, hard-working John and his brave wife who longed to catch a piece of the American dream. He's longing for the American dream. The owner of Baker Farm had hired John to bog for $10 an acre and use the land for a year. It was a hard sharecropper's life, a bad bargain, thought Thoreau, with the horizon all his own. John Field was stuck in his boggy Irish ways, thinking to live by some derivative old country mode in this primitive new country, not to rise in this world until he and his posterity got wings to their feet. Those wings were hard to come by. At the far end of the pond lived Hugh Coyle, whose wife worked in town. Quote, Colonel Coyle had fought at Waterloo before emerging from Ireland to America, where he too became a conquered ditcher. Thoreau spoke to him once and tried to show him Brister Spring. You want to go to Brister Spring? Where good water ran even in the heat of summer. But the alcoholic old man was too weak to walk that far. Soon after, he collapsed on Walden Road and died. Thoreau, troubled, spent an afternoon studying Coyle's eerie, weed-infested house before the town burned it down. These experiences turned Thoreau's attention outward to the other inhabitants of Walden Woods. Ruined houses, ruined lives. He had to look hard to see those traces, but Thoreau found them. Hugh Coyle was not an anomaly, but the last of a struggling community, a rural slum of outcasts, drunks, and derelicts. These were Cato Ingraham, slave of Duncan Ingraham, Esquire, an African living alone in a little house his owner built in 1795 in exchange for his labor. The last of perhaps a dozen slaves who'd moved to Walden Woods. All that remained was a half-filled cellar hole, visible beyond the bean field at the head of the path to Goose Pond. There was also John Wyman the potter, who had squatted in the house that became Hugh Coyle's, digging the clay for his pottery from the pond's silty banks. His son Thomas, also a potter, had bought the acres under Thoreau's house, hence Wyman's Field, and later sold them to Emerson. Zilpah White, enslaved until the Revolution, had declared her freedom by building her own one-room house she lived as a hermitess near Thoreau's future bean field for over 40 years, depending on the pennies she earned, spinning flax into linen and making baskets, brooms, and mats. Arsonist burned down her house in 1813, killing her chickens, cats, and dog. Zilpah rebuilt and survived another 7 years until her death at 82. Kicking aside the leaves, Thoreau unburied a few bricks from her chimney. Brister Freeman, another of Concord's slaves, had fought in the Revolution and declared his personal independence through his surname. Eager to establish his independent identity, he bought an acre on the hill north of it, Walden Pond, quote, Brister's Hill, where he planted an orchard, kept a few pigs, and raised a family with his African wife Fenda, who told fortunes yet pleasantly. Every fall, Thoreau crunched gratefully into a few Fieldman's, quote, wild ciderish apples. A few steps beyond stood the teeny house of John Breed, the barber. Local boys burned it down in 1841. Thoreau raced out from Emerson's, where he was living, to watch it burn. The next night he returned to the commiserate with Breed's son, a field hand who'd come by to mourn his childhood home. Breed, like Coyle, had died drunk on Walden Road in 1824. His wife's clothes were all from the Concord Female Charitable Society, which regularly made donations to church-going Zilpah White as well. We're reading about the predecessors, the things that Thoreau found around Walden Pond that predates his arrival. What do you think of Walden Pond? I have a picture of me inside Walden Pond, in the water, with the book Walden. Where's that picture? I'll have to look through the photographs. We read a little bit, it's a sample reading from 197 to 200 in the Walden, Is It You? Walden, is this you? We're wondering if this is Walden, or we're reading the life of Henry David Thoreau, A Life, by the author Walls. Is this Walden?